Good morning, everyone. It's Basse Ben Buckner with Ag Resource Company. It's Friday, August 22nd. And Dan, a lot has happened in the last 24 hours. We have Pro Farmer doing what Pro Farmer does. We'll get their national yield estimate. I think imminently, we've got questions and rumors over small refinery exemptions. Do they get allocated, reallocated, things like that? We've got sort of the finish line in terms of final yield potential with the row crops. And we've got, of course, still ongoing Chinese tension, hope, but nothing happening just yet. So if you want to go ahead and break down what you are seeing this morning, please go ahead.
Yeah, Ben, thank you. And good morning and welcome to Friday, everyone. It's been a long week. It seems that way anyway for me. As you go to the Pro Farmer Tour, the Iowa yield came out at 198.4. Again, a little disappointing. I think if you looked at this Iowa yield and modeled it out, it would show you that NASS may be somewhere between 7 and 8 bushels an acre too high on their corn estimate. Now, how much the tour participants put in there because of southern leaf rust is unknown. By that, I'm saying kind of pared back their counts and did some other things. But again, a little disappointing, if you will, on the Iowa yield. If we look at soybean pod counts in Iowa, very, very strong, record large. And this has been one thing that's kind of kept through the tour in that the pod counts have been much better than expected. 1384 is a strong pod count for Iowa. We got to get the crop home, but really looking relatively good. Corn yield in Minnesota, 202. So very rarely do we see a corn yield for Minnesota in the Pro Farmer Tour being above Iowa, particularly with as strong as the Western Iowa yield results were in District 1, 4, and 7 yesterday. So I'm a little miffed of what the tour found, but in being up there and talking to a lot of the people that were coming to the hotel, they were all explaining a lot of the southern leaf rust and disease. And I think that did play into mentality and the psyche of the crop scouts that were there. When you look at Minnesota yield, soybean pod counts again, very, very strong, 1247, a big number, up 20% from last year. So again, the one thing that comes home to me, Ben, is if we get good weather, by that I'm saying the cool, sunny weather is just what soybeans would like, followed by 1 or 2 rains late August, early September. It's what the doctor ordered, and we're going to have a big bean crop. That being said, we are still going to have a monster corn crop. Whether that corn yield is down a couple of bushels because of the Iowa fines on yield and maybe the Illinois yield will be determined later today as Pro Farmer comes forward with their national yield estimates. But as I stand back from it, we can all argue a couple bushels whether the U.S. corn yield relative to NASS is up a couple as we think it is or down a couple as Pro Farmer suggests it is. It really doesn't make a difference. It's a big, big crop. When you think about 17.2 or 17.6 billion bushels of corn, either way, that's a big, big pile that the market's going to have to look over the top. Let's move it forward in terms of the tour. There was a lot of talk about this southern leaf rust on the Pro Farmer Tour. You're hearing it in a lot of the social media chats. I just want to point out to everybody that you can look at this graphic here, see the rust, but notice that when you find southern leaf rust, when corn is in the early or late dent stages, let's say, late dough, early dent, your yield losses are somewhere around 2%. So finding leaf rust at this late stage of the development is not a big deal. And a lot of farmers sprayed, one application of fungicides. The question is does it pay to put out another application of fungicides because the yield risk is somewhere between 1% and 3%. I think a lot of farmers decided against that. And to really have southern leaf rust get your crop, you need to really have it happen in blister stage. And we didn't see a lot of that. We saw none of that basically in cornfields in blister or early melt. So this corn crop is being affected by southern leaf rust, but it's happening late enough that I don't think it's going to be a big deal by the final count of it all as we get into November, December, and the January final report. Now, we do have Reuters suggesting today that there will be an EPA decision, an announcement on SRE, small refinery exemptions. And, the news is expected to be that of the new now 204 applications that are out there, that President Trump or the EPA will confirm waivers for a good portion of them. Now, you do have to, of course, qualify. You do have to show hardship financially. We think some of these waivers that now go back to 2016 have done that. So we would imagine there will be some SREs. And taken at face value, it's probably going to be negative on the soy oil market. What's unknown, however, is whether these SREs will be paid out in RINs or in dollars or some other form or mixture thereof. So we'll watch this carefully if Reuters is right. We are not getting confirmation from other news sources, and my people in Washington are not responding, so uncertain. So we'll see today if it happens, but I do believe that the EPA does need to make an announcement quickly. We at Ag Resource have been suggesting for the last couple of weeks that we should expect something by the Labor Day weekend. So this seems to be on time. Let's see what happens. But there's also another twist of all of this, Ben, in that if we go with an SRE, there's now a BRE, which stands for big refiner exemptions. And so will the EPA push off the SRE to the BRE or the big boys? And if that were to happen, that's called a reallocation of assets, or as this case would be exemptions, and the big boys would have to make it up. Now, if this were to happen, this would be a new codification of law. This would require another 45-day comment period in the public view. That would take us into the middle of October here or there. And of course, we're trying to get the RVO for 26-27 completed. So how this all plays out and the court challenges and the legal challenges will be very important. This morning, Bloomberg is suggesting that there is going to be a messy SRE allocation, and we kind of agree with that. We think when the SRE comes out in the small refineries, they will be messy. And then again, whether there's a strong legal path forward, I still believe there's going to be a lot of legal challenges that creates considerable uncertainty. And so I think what happened in the soybean meal oil market yesterday is that it rallied from 51 December back up to around 54 and a half. Maybe it can make it up to 55 or 56, but really, I don't think it can go a lot higher than that until we have real clarity of what's going forward in terms of the SREs to the BREs. Sorry for all my acronyms, but that's kind of the world we live in here today. The other thing we want to talk about yesterday is there was all of this talk about China buying U.S. soybeans. Gulf premiums did jump. We saw the CIF market up anywhere between 6 and 14 cents. There was this story on WeChat here that says, breaking news, according to Fox News, U.S. Secretary Bessent, and I would tell the Chinese, his name is not spelled B-E-N-S-E-N, it's B-E-N-S-S-S-E-N-T, so they need to get their spelling right. But it does tell me that this is probably a placed or misplaced article, depending upon how you want to view it from China or the United States. This got kicked around in the trade quite a bit. Questions came to me quite actively yesterday, calling all my friends down at the Gulf. Everybody said, no, I didn't sell soybeans to the Chinese. Not me, not me, not me. I called some Chinese people. They said, no, we were told not to buy U.S. soybeans, so we're not doing anything. So for now, I'm going to categorize this as an errant rumor. I think that the changes in premiums in the Paranaguá market down in Brazil and the U.S. Gulf got the attention of many, but I can't run it down. This is not to say that COFCO, who's a U.S. merchant, maybe didn't make some purchases of domestic soybeans within the United States, but nothing from the USDA this morning in terms of a Chinese sales announcement. Looking at where we are in soybean sales on a new crop basis, you can see here that U.S. new crop soybean sales are relatively low, the second lowest looking backwards since early 2000. So we're not at the bottom yet. Thankfully, we've seen the rest of the world, principally Europe, be a fairly sizable buyer of U.S. new crop soybeans because of our dollar discount relative to Brazil, but we still don't have any Chinese business as reported by the, of course, sales report yesterday or in the daily sales report here this morning. I'm still doubtful that much has changed, though there is a news story going around that China may have bought 500 Boeing jets because of the trade negotiations. It may be the case. I mean, Boeing's been trying to buy U.S. jets, big jets from Boeing for a long, long time. This is not a concession from the U.S. government. I think China's trying to find a slot where Boeing could sell them those jets. And so this is not like new to trade negotiations, but I'm sure the Trump administration would welcome China buying U.S. Boeing jets. probably all the way out to 2040. This would be an order for 500 that would take many, 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 many years for the Boeing people to fill because they've got such a backlog here today. If you look at the changes that happened down in the Perna Gulf yesterday, this is the basis skew from Perna this morning. And you can see that yesterday we did see a sharp fall in the September position of 15 cents, going to $1.91 over. The October position was down a nickel. And we saw the February drop 9 cents. I don't know if China's playing with the soybean market down there, stepping in, stepping out or not. But we do have a chart to your left showing the premiums and discounts as we look back over time. And when we get into these trade disputes, these basis changes between the United States and Brazil become more robust. So we'll see how this all goes forward. Brazil still has another 8 or 9 million metric tons of old crop soybeans to sell by our estimates. Maybe China didn't want to run up the table, so they stepped out of the market in Brazil for a while, but I still can't find them in the US market as it sits today. Lastly, we'll finish up here, Ben, and I'm sorry for being longer than normal on this broadcast, but we do have some very nice, sunny, cool autumn weather ahead. And if you are worried about disease pressures in Midwest corn and soybean crops, this is the kind of weather that you would like. Cool, sunny weather with cool nights is ideal. Keeping back the rain is even better. So this kind of weather really works into the advantage of the filling corn and potting and filling soybean crop. Now, we still will need another 1 or 2 rains to finish things off. But if you look at soil moisture, the map on your right to the 16 inches, you can see other than maybe the central plains in that Michigan, northern Indiana, Ohio area, much of the other rest of the Midwest has adequate soil moisture that the soybean plant can grab a hold of and really utilize for pod filling and development in this sunny, cool temperature regime that will be there for the next really week to 10 days. Lastly, I'll finish out, Ben, saying the extended model guidance, whether you're looking at the ensemble from the European weather or the AI ensemble model, that new model that came out roughly 10 days ago and is probably now the most reliable, is showing us that there will be a return of rainfall in early September. So my confidence is rising that we're going to come back to a wetter profile that'll be just right for the soybean crop, as it probably needs a drink or two before we get finishing things up by the really second or third week of September. So that's kind of the lay of the land, Ben. Again, a lot going on to your point. There's much in the markets today to decide. We had a strong rally yesterday. I would say if we could push another 10 or 15 cents higher in the soybean market, it'll provide an opportunity. Corn at really 416 to 420 December doesn't need to go higher than that because we still have very, very big crops ahead to get under cover, get in the bin. And as you pointed out, we still have a lack of storage capacity in this country. So sorry for being long-winded, but that's what we had this morning.
Yeah, no, I think the length was appropriate because there is a lot going on. At Ag Resource, we got to chase down these rumors, and that's what we will continue to do. I think to your point, Dan, about the yields and what Pro Farmer's finding, yeah, some disappointment relative to NASS, but if we look at the correlation, Pro Farmer's always 8 to 15 bushels lower than USDA by the final. We put those correlations, put them exactly into our grids, which we're now checking every couple of hours. You probably come up with a national yield of 185.5 to 186.5. So it's still going to be very large. The debate will be ongoing, but I think we do have a lot of physical supply coming at us. So that's still the theme. Be prepared to make some moves. I think if we get recoveries, that is our mindset. As usual, all the best. Have a great weekend, and we'll be back on Monday. Thanks.